All right. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode. So, today I want to talk about a question that I often get, when I'm working with clients, where it's the idea of, well, this feels very real, right? Like, why does this feel so real? Why does my fear, anxiety feel real? Some variation of that question. And I want to talk about really from an interpersonal like level, like, what you're feeling is real, but then also talk about, the greater context that we need to view it through. So yeah, before we dive in, for those of you that don't know me, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Matt Codde, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and the founder of Restored Minds. If you are looking for help and guidance on your journey to recovery, I have some links down in the notes that I'd like to offer to you, with some great resources to get you started, as well as you can head over to restoredminds.com. Also, if you benefit from the show, please help us out by liking, subscribing, and leaving a nice review over on iTunes and Spotify. So, when we talk about fear and this idea of, well, my thoughts feel real, the reality is that you really are having a thought that you are consciously aware of, and you really are having a corresponding feeling that's connected to that thought, generally fear and anxiety, that is real. Like, it is your real experience. Okay. So I think a lot of people will like try to like gaslight you and ghost you, or like, be like, oh, well, it's not real. Well, no, it is real. Like, it is your real experience. It doesn't mean that it is in the collective reality, but it is your perception. Therefore, it is your reality. So I think it's important to understand that what you are thinking and feeling, you really are having those experiences. Now, the difference being is the content of what you're afraid of actually really happening, and actually what's driving the feeling. And because one can have a what if thought and feel a bunch of fear, and that doesn't mean that the what if content that person's experiencing is actually dangerous. It literally just usually means that anxiety is there, and as a byproduct, the mind is usually trying to justify the reasoning for the feeling to begin with. So when someone has a bunch of anxiety and their mind says, well, what if that doorknob's contaminated? It doesn't mean that the doorknob's contaminated. It doesn't mean that if you're having, fearful, intrusive thoughts about harm or sex or God, that really is the cause of the feeling. Generally speaking, the feeling actually preludes the thought. And so you really do have this feeling of fear, and you really do see the mind and notice the mind create these thoughts. That experience is quote unquote real. What's not real is the possible projection of the content, meaning, whether it's about your salvation, or whether it's about this intrusive thought or contamination. Those are just the content that exists within the context of fear. And so while just because you feel an emotion with a thought doesn't make the thought or the content real. Okay, like the actual content. The thought experience is real, but the content is not. And it's important to extrapolate that and distinguish that, because it is a real experience, in the sense of, I'm not denying that you're having a thought and feeling a bunch of emotion. Of course that's happening. It's like that's what's going on. But that doesn't mean that the content is what's actually driving the feeling. Number one, it doesn't mean that is content is real or valid, as in it's actually dangerous. And it doesn't mean that we need to take the content as the issue that we're actually facing. And that you have to understand that you can have emotionally charged thoughts, obviously. And that doesn't mean that they are necessarily valid, right? Someone can feel, and we understand that, because as we change our context on stuff and our beliefs about stuff, our entire emotional structure will change around an experience. Take a breakup that you had a long time ago in a relationship, like wasn't a good relationship. When the breakup happened, you might have felt really sad, and that was your actual experience. But as time went on and you met a different person or you recontextualized the relationship, realizing it wasn't good for you, you don't feel sad about the breakup anymore. The breakup still happened. So the breakup didn't cause your feelings of sadness. The beliefs that were attached to the breakup, your perception, your context that you viewed the breakup through is really what drove the emotional experience. Similarly, the intrusive thoughts are not causing the fear. The fear is already there. That context is there. And the intrusive thoughts that correspond with it generally sprout out of the emotion. And then your beliefs that the thoughts are real or that your emotions are real, that context is what's driving the fear of this whole experience. So we have to be able to recontextualize the experience in a way where we can begin to let it go in a healthy way, as opposed to trying to fight with the content itself. So when someone says like, well, this feels very real, I want to be very, very, very clear. You really are experiencing a thought. You really are experiencing an emotion. I'm not saying that's not real. What I'm saying is the content, because you're experiencing a certain thought with content and because you're having a certain emotion, doesn't make it part of collective reality. And that's generally when you're, working with someone like myself or someone else, when you're having a fearful reaction to something that no one else is having a fearful reaction it's generally because you're taking your fear and projecting it onto something, and that thing is not actually causing your fear. So hope that made sense, and I hope this was helpful, because I definitely don't want to devalidate people like I see happen often, where it's like, well, that's not actually real. It's like, well, no, the experience you're having is real, but your perception of it is what is distorted because of the fear. And so oftentimes it's about being able to recontextualize something that allows you to see it in a way that other people are seeing it, that then allows you to have a completely different overall response to it. So hope that makes sense. And with that, wish you a great day, great week, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Hey there, thanks so much for watching that episode. If you found it helpful, we have some links to some other episodes that we think you might like as well. And if you're looking for help on your journey to recovery from fear, stress, and anxiety, either check out the links in the notes or head over to restoredminds.com. Thank you, and talk to you soon.